All right. Money dance time. Woo, woo, woo. We got to raise the vibe, right?
Oh, yeah.
I always think we need like at least a minute straight of just dancing. I had the most fun. I got on a show once, and the woman, I was like, "Man, your vibe is high." She's like, "I do a like pre-podcast dance every time just to raise the vibe." I'm like, "I love it."
That's awesome.
So, welcome everyone. Today, you're back for another NFA Money Talk, where you know that we dive deep into all things money. Business to me brings out the biggest fears and uncertainties and doubts. And it's like this roller coaster ride of, I think of it as a roller coaster ride of awesomeness that's really going to help you discover yourself in ways that you never thought it would. And so when people come on, I love to talk to them about all the ups and downs they've experienced so that they can help you know that you're not alone, and also know that other people go through it, and we want to help you navigate through it with more grace, ease, joy, flow, and fun. So that's why we're here. So Dr. Alex, she'll go into all of her story. You know the jig, how I kind of love to ask people as we just dive into this deep conversation, and it's this unfolding of the experience. So she'll get a great intro of everything awesome she does in the world after we just start with a fun money question. So let's start with what would you say is a current money fear you're working through right now?
Ooh, that's a good one. The current one I'm dealing with, I think, is around worthiness and
Ooh, okay.
letting myself deserve it.
Okay. Ooh, let's
On some
talk about
level.
this for a minute.
Yeah.
My computer's going real slow. So just a second, everyone. This is the fun with live sometimes, is that it doesn't always want to do what I want it to do. Okay. So let's dive into that a little bit, because I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah.
In some ways, I would say it's maybe the core of all money blocks, right? It's like, am I enough?
Probably.
Is
Yeah.
my business going to be enough? When will it be enough? Even when you're making a lot of money, like, is the money enough? Like that kind of thing. Will you share a little bit about how it's showing up for you, the worthiness piece?
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit of that, just what you shared, but also, I found, and I'll share more of my story as we go through this, but in my first business where it nearly hit 7 figures, it was, I just never managed to keep the money, right? And that was very much driven by a money block. It was like I was in charge of something that was producing a lot of revenue, but we really had nothing to show for it. And I definitely wasn't the one making all the money, because I had this thing where like, oh, it's all about the team, and the team is what did that, and it's not about me, and not wanting to take the credit, where really not like I should have. There's this weird thing for me with like humility and just owning my power and who I am. And so that's kind of the block in the worthiness of like, that's how I'm viewing this. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So to me, it sounds like worthiness, meaning like, I don't deserve the credit for building this.
Yeah.
So then, were you
Not somebody
overpaying
else.
people that worked for you,
Oh,
or
definitely.
okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So it was one of those
I
problems where like you weren't paying yourself first, and you weren't paying yourself enough, and draining yourself, which I know led to your current business.
Yeah.
Like the way you run your current business, let's say.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So worthiness. So I know that, for people who are watching this live or later, in the comments, share something about this. Like, if this resonates with you, I don't think I know an entrepreneur who doesn't have some variation of this at some point in time. That piece of, and we're talking, Dr. Alex was a 7-figure earner. So like, she's successful in business, and she knows how to build a business, right? Exactly. And that's one thing where we can go, it almost makes me think of like living paycheck to paycheck, where it's like you can be bringing in a massive amount of money, but still not having good cash flow in your personal life, because you're not, if you have this money block where you go like, I'm not worthy, you're going to overgive to other people. Could be your clients, could be the people that work for you or with you on your team. And then you undervalue yourself, and then you burn yourself out, and then that business is no fun. So, share something in the comments if you're watching this at it, live or later. Does this resonate? How does this show up for you? And then, Dr. Alex, will you share some of your background story? Because I know that really relates to a lot of what you do in the world with people now.
Yeah. So my doctor at this point comes from being a chiropractor, and I practiced for 10 years. I built we were just shy of 7 figures. The biggest year we had, I think we grossed 800,000 or just over, built out over $1 million. And I built all that as a single mom, going through a rough divorce, rough marriage relationship. And, it was kind of my like escape, but I also didn't know what I was doing. Like the first time I sat down at a bank to try to get a line of credit, they were like, "Where's your P&L and balance sheet?" And I was like, "My what?" I literally knew nothing about building a business. And so I experienced a lot of success. We more than doubled every year for 5 years, but it also burnt me out because as I was going through, you brought up in the beginning of this, like we learn a lot about ourselves, and it's one of the most, I'd say, like confronting and challenging things you can do to yourself is to own and run a business, because it literally challenges every piece of you, and you have to go through so much growth in order to be able to lead something like that and grow in that way. And there was this moment where I just bought a 6,000 square foot building. I had, at that point, 12 staff, like 7 providers, 5 support staff, this huge space. And I walked up into my newly remodeled office. I just spent another $100,000 like remodeling this thing. And I was like, this is not the dream. Like, this is not what I want to be doing. I was burnt out. My thyroid was jacked up. My hair was falling out. I lost my voice. I had no energy. Like, I wasn't practicing what I preached. And my wrists, I've had 2 wrist surgeries since that time because it was torn to shreds from being a chiropractor, and, something I love, but really hard on me physically. And at that point, I didn't really necessarily see a way out because I'd built this huge thing. And
yeah,
it wasn't serving me. Like, I was not lit up, excited, not loving what I did. I was dreading coming to work every day. It was all the, all that. And so I've, and a lot of my story, I ended up going through a whole pivot that unfortunately last year ended up resulting in me filing bankruptcy on that initial business, just the way all that went with the pandemic, a bank that really just wanted to be a jerk, and a lot of things. But I've built this new business, and in the last couple of weeks, I haven't talked about this, but I've been seeing some patterns with myself of like overgiving and not charging enough or not asking for enough upfront, and kind of running myself ragged again. But now I can recognize it and be like, oh, let's not do that. This time. Like, it's time for something new. So there's a whole lot to unpack in there. But
I mean, you said so many important things there. I want everyone to hear Dr. Alex in first the vulnerability of sharing, because I think a lot of people have shame around like the perception of bankruptcy as failure versus like going, this is part of the game. Like there are ups and downs in businesses, especially COVID. Also, I mean, I want to dig in more to you, standing in your office that you just spent $100,000 on and going like, oh crap, I didn't build something I want to build. Like I built a prison out of my business and I don't enjoy it anymore. Like that's huge. Yeah. And then being willing to pivot and just go like, I'm doing something else. And sometimes that happens through force, right? It can be like health degradation. And we don't want to get ourselves to that place. And it's easy to do. And so, I think there's a lot of value in what you're saying and sharing. So thank you for being willing to share that story. For you, when you were, how long did it take after you noticed that, where you're standing in the office going like, oh shit, I just built a prison for myself? What'd you do next to get out of that situation?
So I started, and I always have this story. And my story is I didn't necessarily do this well, but I knew a couple things. I knew my body wasn't going to hold up to adjusting. So I started looking for other ways to serve and, do the things that do light me up and that I love, which are, helping people heal and transform. Like really my thing is more about transformation, and chiropractic was an avenue to that, but it wasn't my zone of genius. We talk all the time about this in our connection, but, so I got certified as a health coach and started making some moves and started, doing more functional medicine and bringing on some clients in a different vein. But, at the same time, when it rains, it pours, right? So at the same time, because I had other people who could carry the chiropractic side of the business and all that, but we also hit our like 2/3 of our income came from one in particular insurance company, and they broke their claims processing and didn't pay us for 6 months. And so all of a sudden I'm not able to cover payroll and not able to do all this stuff. So I was pivoting like so fast. It was like overnight, we don't take insurance anymore. Everybody's paying cash. Then that particular company told me I had to wait 90 days because that was my contract with them. And I was like, are you going to pay me? But anyway, so we got through that. I had to downsize. Like some people decided to move on into something new that were on my staff. So things shrank, and then I didn't need that building anymore. So I rented it. Then they bought it. that wasn't enough for the bank. So, they were still coming after me for a
Mm,
bunch of money. And I was like,
let it go.
I'm just done.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and finally really reaching that point, like, even though, and I've worked with you some, one of the things that, just for those listening, that Dr. Amanda had me do was write down 250 good things that came out of filing bankruptcy. Because especially around, I'd built, my team was really my family, and I'd built, just a really great family environment. Our culture, our office culture was amazing. And that is something I miss, and I'm working through recreating in like an online space, because it's a little bit different. But
Yep.
so I miss that. But looking back on, all of them have grown into, they're all owning their own businesses, or like doing their own thing that they wouldn't have done had I not pivoted and made a
Yeah.
change for what I needed, and let that be okay.
Yeah. So background here, Dr. Alex and I, we met actually doing podcasts with each other. And
Yeah.
then she heard about my NFA Money Mamas mastermind and joined. And she like such a beautiful part of the community. And it's part of that recreation of community. And in there we give, we have money talks, and we read books about wealth consciousness and raising your money mindset and all the cool things. And of course, I bring strategies to the table to help people shift through their money blocks. And so the one she's talking about, like, anytime you have a negative charge on something, you're seeing the unconscious, you're seeing consciously only the downsides of the experience. So to shift your brain to seeing the balanced equilibrium of it, you want to start to focus on, what were actually the upsides of it, so that you can start to bring into your awareness all parts of experiences. And that way you don't need to keep recreating it, because you will keep attracting to you the things that you haven't cleared in your, historical wounding, or things that you perceive as traumas. And so, Dr. Alex doing this list, it's like, I mean, I know for you, like, it was like it's like the family you create in a business. And so then that feeling of like letting them down, and thinking somehow that it was a drawback to them, and not seeing the benefits to them of the business going away in the way that it was. So really powerful practice to do, everyone. And of course, for the ladies out there, if you're interested in being a part, you can sit in and test it out. Really cool. Just go to nfamoneymamas.com. And we have like these kind of conversations in depth all the time. So that's what Dr. Alex is referring to. Something for you, will you share, because you're talking about that worthiness piece, and then you're talking about the shifting, in your business, and owning the parts of all of it. And then, you said something about how, in your current life, you're recreating a business where it feels connected and balanced, and then you're noticing some of the repatterning of overworking still. So, share a little bit there, because again, we will recreate patterns until we clear them. We just keep recreating until we get conscious of them. And so that's like Dr. Alex is doing that. And so that she can have a business this round where she feels abundant, joy, fulfilled, flowing with money. So will you share some of the process that you're going through there to start to make sure that you're charging what you're worth and valuing yourself so that you don't burn out?
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I did most recently, and it was interesting because I actually did this in my first business, like right before we had some massive growth, but I sat down and figured out what my values are personally and for the new business, which I hadn't really done. And I think a lot of us don't. It's, like, we're so focused on like, how do I make more money, or, how do I do this, or someday I'll pick my head up. And so I've really been intentional about just taking time and processing some stuff and getting clear on, like, getting more clarity, I think has been huge.
Will
And
you
then the other
share like
thing,
what
yeah,
values mean? Like what does that practically mean to you?
practical. So values are like the 7 things that, I have my personal ones and then business ones that like basically define, like, those are the things that I cannot violate, I guess you will say. And so they
Okay.
act like a doorman,
Okay.
more or less.
So
So
it's
like,
so it's like, because I know people think of values differently. Like there's,
mhm,
the way, and I know DeMartini like trained through
yeah.
values determination, which is more or less like zone of genius activities that you love to do, like
Mhm.
priorities, versus values like being like honesty, integrity type of thing.
I mean more the honesty, integrity, like authenticity is one of mine.
Okay. Got
Like,
it. Okay.
yeah, being
I just want
raw,
to make
real,
sure people
all those
know,
things. Yeah.
because there's a lot of different interpretations of that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's values lists. So I just sat down and like, picked a bunch that make the most resonate the most, and then actually write a sentence for each one. So I have like 7 personal ones and then 7 or 8 ones for the business. And in doing that, and then the other thing I did was like sat down and actually made a list of what things do I really, really love about what I'm doing right now. And one of the things that kept coming up was like, I have a group aspect to what I'm doing with women. And just to give a little background, I help women not get to the point where I was at, where like health is falling apart and you haven't been taking care of yourself and you have no idea how to actually start doing that and putting that into practice. But I've recently, since the beginning of the year, started doing a group part, and I love our group calls. And I was like, and I don't necessarily love, I love every woman I work with. I don't necessarily love being on Zoom for 5 to 6 hours a day, in back-to-back one-to-one sessions where I feel like there's more power in the group. So that's been one of the big pivots for me. And that was one of the things I recognized is, I recently did a bunch of stats on my practice, and it's like, I'm spending way too much time with people for what I'm charging. And like, that is the thing that's going to burn me out again. Cause I've really tried to model a business where time is not money.
Yeah. Okay. And do you think that there's phases of business development where that's possible?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cause you're like, if you don't mind sharing, like you've been this business round of of your new business is how old?
I started it in January of 2021. So,
okay.
Like
so January
full
2021.
on okay. And we hit, and that's the other thing when you've come from having, nearly a 7-figure business, it's like, I broke 6 figures last year and it was like,
because you're comparing it
so much more
to before.
And it's like letting go of that comparison. And and I've talked to you about this because I know you're working on the 7-figure business. It's like, who says we have to build a 7-figure business? Like, can't, you can have something that's a lot smaller, but is more profitable and that you're
totally. Yeah. Well, and that's such an interesting thing to think about, right? Because you could go, I have a 7-figure business, but I don't bring home very much, or I have a 7-figure business and I bring home almost all of it, or I have a 6-figure business, bring it almost all home. Looking at those numbers is pretty important. And I like what you're saying is like you're reverse engineering a business from a place of going, I choose not to burn out. And so, in that business model, I can't have to be hours a day, 7 days a week, or 5 days a week, or whatever it is. Otherwise, I'm going to burn out. It's looking at alternative ways to create impact and income in ways that don't burn you out.